Hello and welcome to this In Conversation with the wonderful Tamara Campbell, who's an incredibly talented circus and physical theatre artist, performer, director, and founder of the Kiama Kiss Arts Festival and Laughter House Entertainment. Hi, Tamara. Welcome
Hello.
and thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
My name's Lena Stein and I work in the research space at the Australia Council for the Arts. But this conversation today is beyond research. It's about deeply listening to artists, practitioners, and arts leaders like yourself about their practice, work, and experience. So I'd like to begin by you giving us a quick introduction and overview of yourself and your work, your art form and your practice.
Oh, wow.
Brief overview.
Try and keep it quick. So I would say that I'm a physical and character comedian. That's what I've done all my life. Created fairly ridiculous and outlandish physical and comedy characters. I've mostly worked on the outdoor festival market. I've worked in, I'm not exactly sure how many, something like 35 countries across the globe. And what drove me to this originally, perhaps when I was a teenager, was the desire to be an actress, but that soon fell by the wayside for me, actually, and it became very obvious to me that what I really cared about was accessible theatre. I wanted to do things that educated people towards how amazing theatre was, that it wasn't just a highbrow, expensive experience. Obviously, we're going back to the early 90s here, when it probably was even more like that than today. I think people engage more with theatre today, but so for me, I wanted it to be an education experience, an experience about bringing, a bunch of people together to have a moment in time that only they shared. And so I was, for that reason, very drawn to sort of the street theatre world and the outdoor arts and festivals world, where I just felt like it was more accessible. There was more possibility, and it had an education aspect, and it also had that idea of creating community through a sense of shared laughter and joy. So I guess that explains me, well, where I came from anyway. And then so spent most of my career traveling across Europe, and then when we had two children of school age, we decided to settle back in Australia and started Laughter House Entertainment. That's it.
Wow, thank you. That's kind of leading on to my next question as well. So you've performed around the world, as you say, in more than 35 countries, and I think I was reading also in multiple languages.
Tried to.
Absolutely. How do you feel? I mean, we are sort of limited right now in the opportunities that we have to connect and jump off the precipice, as you say, in a physical sense. We can't just hop on a plane and go to theatre school or to university or to take that, opportunity on the other side of the world right now. We're very limited to, what we can do online, on our little laptops. And some people face even more barriers than that too, without a stable internet connection, or all of these barriers to accessibility. I suppose I have a couple of questions along this line of thinking. Is how, from your perspective, how are you finding these barriers? How are you finding and working through these barriers right now? And how do you feel that potentially people who were when you were first starting out, how do you feel like they will be able to navigate this sort of limited physical, because you do work in the physical, you're a physical theatre artist, when we're so confined to screens? How do you think that can translate, and how have you been able to forge a connection in this way?
Oh,
sorry, that's such a big question.
No, it's
so much too.
It just makes me want to burst into tears, to be honest with you. Like, it's just such an incredibly emotional question, and period of time for me, and I think many people, artists who what they do is all based in a connection to people and to bringing people together to create something super special. And I have explained it during this pandemic. It's like someone has cut off one of my limbs. Like, I miss my work so much. I miss what especially festivals give to the world and to people, and that moment of escape, that time for play, that release, that, you know, the broadening of your mind, the allowing yourself to be free from the shackles of the everyday and of the status quo and all of those things that I think that the environment of the arts can create for people, and not just for artists, for audience as well. I, to be probably pretty blunt about it, hate this scenario. I really do.
A lot of people would agree with you there.
Oh, I remember in September last year, I did some little shows in the art bar here. I think you were even
I was there.
I did some little experimental stuff for me, just some things I wanted to do here in Kiama. I think there was allowed to be 16 or 20 people in there or something.
That's a small audience, yeah.
And I remember the first night, the first one we did, at the end of it, I was just saying thank you to people for coming out and for being there. And I did literally just burst into tears. I was so happy to be in front of people again, because we'd done a bunch of stuff, you know, this whole pivot thing. Sorry, that's really negative, but I'm like, don't tell me to pivot.
Tired. I think people are definitely tiring of the word pivot.
Oh God. And you know, and I just remember feeling so emotional. And we'd done all of this stuff. We'd done a bunch of stuff online. We ran our festival online in 2020 and very successfully. But that was in the time of that first lockdown, and people didn't have Zoom fatigue yet. People weren't over the fact that online is not the same. Now, of course, many people have businesses where they're able to conduct themselves online, and that's great. And some people actually don't need to be around other people that much, and they're okay with this scenario, or they like the fact that there's distance or whatever. You know, I don't necessarily love to be around lots of humans, or like, you know, if I'm squashed or tight or whatever, but I have always said that I love humans when I'm in the middle of them and they're all out there laughing at me and having fun because of what we have created or what we're doing. Like, and that is something that I mean, I'm fascinated by humans, and I'm fascinated by how, you know, how much they will break down their barriers and change when they are laughing and enjoy and together, you know. And I wonder what the impact of us not having that in our life really is. And this time has also made me feel unimportant and insignificant, and like our whole industry isn't necessarily, you know, I mean, in this country it's always been a struggle, but you know, and especially in what the Germans call the Kleinkunst, you know, the little arts, the little artist, for people who do the kind of things that we do. You know, we don't strive to be in a Beckett play at Sydney Theatre Company. You know, that's not our values. That's not where we sit. We want to be out on the ground with people who are coming to things that are free, or, you know, these community events that can still have high value artistic activity going on at them. And I think that I feel like I've had, you know, 18 months of my life taken away from me. But at the same time, I have done my best to make the most of it. And I've worked really hard in the background. I've been doing a lot of interviews to build out what I'm putting on YouTube. I've put very little of it up there yet. I've created a whole heap of stuff. The barrier for me then is actually getting it edited, being able to afford to pay someone to actually edit it when I'm trying to keep my company afloat and keep my, you know, team employed and these kind of things. It just sort of falls by the wayside a little bit, I suppose. But then and I've been working really hard on a project that I call Own Your Stage, which I'm actually just writing my funding application for. But I mean, I can do the corporate version of it and sell it as a product, totally happy to, but I also would love to do it for teenagers. And it's around this idea of, you know, being, everyone is a unique human put on this planet, and we have extraordinary little characters inside of us that make up who we are. And it's about taking ownership of your own stage and who you are, and presenting yourself to the world as the uniquely wonderful you, and accepting that, and building your own confidence and belief in yourself, and structuring your own story to actually take you forward, rather than being caught in the stories that so often hold us back, I suppose. So I'm really working hard on this project, and it's something that I really care about and want to do moving forward. So I got lots of things, always lots of things. We came up with our sort of COVID safe festival, which has been funded now to happen in Wollongong, and I'm
fantastic.
Working on doing it with in Kiama as well, in conjunction with the LETAP festival. It's still you know, talking there whether or not that festival will even happen. But we've been doing so the Wollongong one is called Ride the Cultural Gong. So you actually cycle from one place to another and back again, and you'll stop at sort of 7-8 locations on the way and watch a piece of performance back on your bike and keep cycling. So it's so just like these kind of things, lots of stuff's come up, and we've created beautiful things. But you know, there's not enough doing. It hasn't been enough doing of the work out for the people. I think the other thing for me that has, in talking of resilience, I've really had to double down fairly hard on continuing to laugh. Our family is, you know, we have our own little sense of humor, and we spend a lot of time laughing. And I, you know, just keep myself occupied. I was like, what can I do in terms of things like the council elections? People kept telling me I should run for council, and I'm like, no. And so what I thought to do instead is I've been doing some videos with Kiki called Kiki Does the Councillors, and I've just been, does the candidates. Oh, wow. Kiki does the candidates, and I've been interviewing all the candidates, just, you know, because that's my contribution. So I'm like, let's learn more about who this human is, you know. So we've been doing that. And the other thing really for my resilience has been in my own headspace. I get up early every morning, I do some exercise, I write in my morning pages, I swim in the rock pool, I, you know, do some exercise. Just I that's one of the few things that keeps me sane, definitely. And so lucky to live here in beautiful Kiama, obviously.
Yeah, we've mentioned her a couple of times. Kiki is your alter ego, and she's fabulous. Do you want to say anything else about Kiki before we continue?
Kiki's my hero. She's everything I wish I could be in life. She's brave and brazen, but kind, and you know, of course, the best thing about her is that she comes from a totally made up place, a totally made up world. So she can create anything and everything she wants to. The world is completely hers because, you know, it's all in her imagination, or mine. I wish I was Kiki. I really do. It's so funny when I say it, because people go, you know, you are her. Like, yeah, she is me. I am her. But she's this, you know, she's like the freest part of me. She's like, I just love so much about her. My time dressed as that crazy woman is some of the happiest and most free time in my life. You know, I feel alive and funny and courageous, and but also I feel like she is, you know, she really has an impact on people, and I think that's really, it's really lovely. And that's people of all ages, you know, like little girls all the way through to grown men. You know?
Getting people out of themselves, having fun. And I know that might be a bit of an obvious question, but I'm really interested to know a bit more about that. And I'm not sure if that's a very straightforward question, but overall success in your practice and how laughter and joy meshes with that. I mean, and knowing that you are an artist as a job as well. It's not, it's fun. It's absolutely fun, and you enjoy it so much, but it's also a success is an element of your work as a working artist as well.
Yeah, and this is really interesting. I think yes, laughter is a definite driver for us. Like, it's really important. I think if we had an audience that didn't laugh, we'd be pretty unhappy for them and for us. We always say that David and I personally take a lot of responsibility, and we ask a lot of artists who work for us to share this view, this value, is that if an audience isn't fully engaged, then it's not their fault, it's our fault. You know, we always like that is one thing for us. It is our job, regardless of how difficult the situation is, to win over those people and give them a good time. That is 100% our job. And we do take that very seriously. And I love that you said to forget themselves, because I think that is exactly, as I always say, it's a moment in time. It's it's to forget themselves, but we always pitch to obviously the people that pay us, the organizers, the producers, the events teams, whatever they are, that it's our job to make their event unforgettable. And that's what we do. Like, we plant something into the brain of those people that means that they take it home with them. It's not just, there's a difference between going to an event that has, and I mean no disrespect or derogatory, kind of intentions here, but if you go to an event that has some market stalls, some local dance, kids dancing, a car show and shine, let's say, and a few carnival rides, lovely. Sure, people have a very nice time, but they're not going to remember that. That doesn't sit in their heart, it's not. And so, but if they walk into somewhere and they are presented with an experience, even like our talking lampposts, these inanimate objects that sit there and talk to people, it's crazy that people will remember that and the experience that gives them, because it's so left of what they expected. It surprises them, it makes them laugh, and as you say, it makes them forget themselves for just a moment. And I always say the lampposts show me three different kinds of people. It's the people who just want to know how it works, and will stay there until they work it out. And there's the adults that are absolutely willing to have a conversation with a talking lamppost. Like, they're willing to, step outside of how they're supposed to behave and talk to an inanimate object as though it's real. It's just beautiful to see an adult do that. And I can't remember what my third version is. I think it's just the people who are willing to sort of, they're just willing to have a laugh about it and keep going, But it's, I can't remember what I was saying, talking about laughter. Yeah, so I think that laughter is extremely important, that altering, it's not state altering, that's a silly way of saying, but to have an effect. So
it transforms.
Yeah,
it transforms.
Transformative, that's right. And mostly from a place of taking people out of their head into their heart, that's it, or into their gut, whatever it is. It becomes more visceral, I guess. It's more we spend so much time up here, and I think laughter takes us out of there. It just sort of, it puts it into our body, it settles stuff into our body, and then we're feeling, not thinking. And it's really
there
nice.
are absolutely proven health and well-being benefits to the arts, and not only laughter, but so many elements of arts and creative activities, and watching and being immersed in art. It's even been prescribed as medicine, I think, in the UK. And so that's a real tangible thing, an effect that you're having on people. And again, it's transformative of a state of mind, and like you said, relaxing and making people feel at home.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that, I think there's a statistic that says that children can laugh up to 300 times a day, and adults laugh like 16 if they're lucky, And I think this is a really interesting thing. What happens to us, where does it go? Where does our sense of play and adventure and fun and silliness and, it's just, we certainly try and hold on to it in our little household, I'm like, how do we, it's spreading that message to the bigger world is so super important to me. I would like to say one other thing in terms of that, what are the drivers, what works for us? I think another thing that you know, maybe it's controversial, I don't know, but for us, we as artists, we wanted to be self-sustaining. We wanted to, you know, wanted to prove that we could make a living and exist, and do our art. That was really important to us, and particularly to me. I grew up, you know, not so much from my mother. She was fairly good about it, but there's a lot of people when you say that you're going to be a performer or an actress or whatever it is that you say, who go, yeah, good luck, you know. Well, you better get a, you know, you better study something else, you better have a backup plan, you know, all of that kind of language. My daughter is at Performing Arts High School now. She tells me that she hears this all the time too. She doesn't hear it from us, obviously, but, you know, she hears it from the world still. The world still thinks that art is not a real job. And, you know, David and I have only ever, with the exception of my probably first 18 months out of university, I have been made my living from being a performer, full stop. I have not done anything else. So I think that, you know, it is completely possible. And we also we are not funded as a company. We get funded to do some projects every now and then, but we're not funded as a company. We run as a business, and, you know, we make that work. And I think it's obviously pre-COVID, COVID has kind of made that a little bit different. But I think there's a lot to be said around that thinking as well, like making the arts making them sustainable and finding your way to do that. And for us, that's been a lot through festivals and working a lot with councils and their festivals, and we've managed to make that work though. I think that's important too. I think probably for me the biggest thing that is changing, I guess, in my life, it's interesting, I'm sure, you know, you have an identity related to your career, and mine has always been, you know, being funny, I guess. But it's interesting how happy I am now to embrace my serious side, you know, and particularly around wanting people to have a better experience of themselves and of their own life, and how I combine, you know, my sense of humor and my sense of comedy and play and wonder into that space as well. That's something I think about a lot going forward. How can comedy help with mental health, with perception of self, and I think it all aligns really well. It's just how those products are created and what those things are. And so I guess the big thing that's happened for me in this journey of life in the arts and time is that finally at the age of 48, I think I actually accept who I am. I nearly accept the real me. And, you know, and I think if I hadn't have been a performer, I would have worked in the social sciences or anthropology, so I would have still worked with humans and still wanted to know all about humans and helped humans. And now as I get older, I think more and more about how I want to help humans even more than I have, like making them laugh. You help them for a brief moment in time, and maybe they remember that for a few years and it brings back joy to them. But I'm like, okay, now, yeah, I want to help more, and in different ways, but still through the arts and through using comedy and all my skills. So that's probably the one thing that I guess I don't talk about a lot, and having the bravery and courage and ownership to just be who I am now, and want Tamara to take some stage space as well, I suppose. In that way. Yeah, I think that I spent most of my life, you know, hiding behind these very big characters that I created, and, you know, being so happy when I was them. So I look forward to a future where I can still be happy being them, but I can also feel like I carve a path for myself now that I kind of have owned who I am, I suppose.
Yeah. That kind of covers what I was about to ask you. I was wondering about Kiki and how that and how you might potentially evolve her and how she will grow with you in the future?
Oh, I have a brilliant thing that I'm working on. I've done it a few times where I demask from Kiki into Tamara on stage,
Oh,
usually
wow,
at the
cool.
end of shows or at the end of events or whatever. And then I talk a little bit about, depending what the event is, but, maybe about my own anxieties, or the fact that as a young girl, I felt I wasn't allowed to be funny if I was attractive. So I uglified myself in these characters, and, just all of this kind of, I talk about whatever is relevant to whomever I'm talking to. But I'm now working on the idea of being able to actually take Kiki demasked to Tamara and then bring back Kiki as a puppet, a ventriloquist puppet.
That's difficult.
So we can have this whole little circle of Tamara and Kiki, because I think it's really interesting what what's going on there, and this whole idea that I've been just so sort of shy and lacking in confidence my whole life, yet I've made my living on stage as this brash and brave, and
you're taking audiences on that journey as well.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a magical thing that you do.
Yeah, and I think it's time to be. It's time. Well, it's time to jump off the precipice again, huh? Go back there.